What is going on, everyone? Chris with Journals, Comics, and Pop Culture. It is Friday, and this is Friday Night Live. I'm a few minutes late. Guys, I'm telling you, this is why I usually do like 6:05 or 5:05, because we're going live at 6:05. I did 6 o'clock even this time, and I knew I couldn't do it, but we are here. Thank you, everyone that's hanging out right now. We got an awesome special guest to bring on in just a few minutes. I want to say what's up to some folks. X11, bring on the Bronze Age journalism. I love it. I love it. Jay War, what's going on, Jay? Dale. Chris, what song is this from? I'll tell you one thing, you never catch me fronting as I proceed to give you what they wanting. High road, y'all. That's what's up. Third Eye Vision, baby. All right, we got Travis T. Rob Phoenix, what's going on, Rob? Let's see. Jacob's in the house. Viper. Peter T. Tony T. We got a lot of T's. Travis T. Peter T. Tony T. Martin's in the house. What's going on, Martin? Man, Odd Skuro. What's going on? We got Spider Dude 71. Spider Dude 71, the winner of this awesome. I'm telling you guys, look, for those of you who are waiting on winnings from me, I say this and I say it jokingly, but serious as well. I don't give things away and then keep them for myself. It does take me a little bit of time. That's just, it's how it is. But I promise you guys, everyone that wins something gets it. It might just take a good couple of weeks or so for me to finally. Like I just started getting to the post office with all my raffle items for what was that now 3 weeks ago. So I appreciate everyone's patience. I really do. It's just I don't get a day off, guys. I don't get a day off. All right, man. We got an awesome show today, guys. Seriously. Just because I know I want to preface this right now. I know that the Collector P, what's going on? Matt Labno. So, Swaggy, what's going on, Swaggle? Swaggle Rock, a.k.a. Swaggle Haas Comics. Guys, I keep my channel like PG-13. So, I know the title of this video or this live stream is F Your Spec, but we're going to keep it clean. You know, you can use the imagination, but we're going to keep it clean for anybody that has kids wanting to watch tonight. We're not, I just want to let that be known, okay? So, folks, it's Friday. I hope everyone had a really good week. Really busy week for me prepping for the show. I got in contact actually with a friend of the channel that hit me up about a little collection they have. So, I'm going to be meeting up with this individual tonight, hoping to drop that video tomorrow. All right. It is a new month. I want to let all my Patreons know. So, all my patrons that are here right now, we're going to be doing May's Q&A live stream, the Patreon-only live stream, next Friday. So look out for that. I'll post the time. I'm thinking maybe somewhere around 4:30 p.m. Pacific time. All right. I will be getting together the new giveaway for the new month for Patreon, as well as for my YouTube channel members. So my YouTube channel members, look out for that too. I will be posting that as well this week. I had a gift donated that somebody said, I'm good, appreciate it, pay it forward. So I'm going to be paying it forward. I had it around here somewhere. It was an X-Men lot. So here it is right here. So this X-Men lot is going to go to either a Patreon winner or a channel member winner. I haven't decided yet, but yeah, so that's going to go out this month as well. So good little stack of books right here. All right, guys, if a couple things still too. No, we're hot. There we go. If you don't know, we don't have a comic book canon show next Sunday again because it's Father's Day. But we will be live 2 days from now. So catch us on Sunday, 5 p.m. Pacific. Me and Jeff will be hanging out. We're going to have a really good show. Again, as always, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. We are announcing a new EGS slab that we will be giving away for the month of June for Fresh from the Comic Shop submissions. All right, so make sure you guys are submitting with your hashtag FFTCS to Instagram. If you aren't familiar with what Fresh from the Comic Shop is, I highly recommend that you all tune in this Sunday to the Comic Book Canon show. Our Comic Book Canon YouTube link is below. Give us a sub over there. We have a segment called Fresh from the Comic Shop every week. It's really easy to enter to win. Big shout out to Tony T and EGS for sponsoring the slab giveaway every single month. All right, folks. Star Set Comics. What's going on? Evan, what's going on? Frisbee. Serge is here. What's up, Serge? All right, folks. We got a show to do. We got a special guest to bring on. F your spec. Now, y'all might take this one way or another way, but we're going to get down to business, and you guys are going to hear what we have to say today. And I think it's very important what we address today because it has a lot to do with the current state of the market in many different ways and how it affects the comic book hobby, whether or not you're heavily into speculation or not. We're going to have some examples of some books. We're going to look at some books, data in terms of what they've been doing on the market. We're going to question the state of spec. We're going to question how movies and TV shows play a role in that. And I think we're going to address it in a way that's fresh and new, hopefully. And we're going to break it down. But in order to do that, folks, we got to bring in today's special guest, C-Ax. What's going on? Guys, welcome in. Let's see. I got to actually remove something real quick. Here we go. Welcome in, guys. Bronze Age Nerd.
Hey, what's up, Chris? How's it going?
What's up, man? How you doing?
Doing really well, man. Just got back from the coast. Had a good time out there for my anniversary. And I'm ready to talk about
happy anniversary, man.
Thank you very much, man. I appreciate that.
That's awesome. How many years?
So this will be 12 years. 12 years.
12 years. Yep. That's a good amount of time, man. Right on. Hey, so having you here, I'm rocking the purple today because I knew you'd have some purple thing going on. Right? Is that some purple that I'm getting?
Yeah, a little purple, and then I got the Sentinel back there. It's not lit super well, but there's a purple Sentinel back there too.
Right on. All right. I had to rock some purple. Cool, man. So, okay, folks, guys, if you're not familiar with Bronze Age Nerd, go subscribe to his YouTube channel. It's right on the top there. DJ Moonchild, what's going on? Preston, what is going on? Guys, Bronze Age Nerd YouTube, give him a sub. Bronze Age,
thank you.
Take a moment or two to tell everyone here what you got going on and what you're all about.
Hey, guys. So, I'm a comic collector just like everybody here probably. I love nerd culture. And one of the things I started doing a couple of years ago when the pandemic was going on was a YouTube channel. I wanted to, get some creative stuff going to really kind of flex my editing skills and my sound and learn how to do video and all that stuff. So I started a YouTube channel. And what else was I going to talk about other than comic books? Because that's what I love. It's what I grew up. That was my hobby when I was a kid, comic books and sports cars, that kind of stuff. And all this, this entire amazing comic book community existed out there. And there were all these, hot 10, top 20, spec lists, all that stuff out there, which is very apropos for what we're going to talk about tonight.
Right.
And I said, hey, you know what? I love playing devil's advocate. That's my favorite thing to do, not just like to be argumentative or for comic books, but it's like, to me, if you believe in something, the best way to test that theory is to put up arguments against it, right? To see if that really still holds true after you've tried to tear apart that position a little bit from like a logical perspective. So I created things like the top 5 not to buy list, where I take all the tops, cover price, CBSI, key collector, and I take a look and I say, which 5 comic books on that list am I not going to go after this week? Like, there's no way you can get me to go after those books. And I created a video series about that. And I even follow up months down the road to see how the prices of those books have done. In addition to covering, comic book news and all the kind of other fun stuff that most of us do too.
Absolutely, man. Well said. And that's why I really appreciate what you do. I think we have a lot in common in terms of, being able to look at both sides of a coin and really dive into argumentation. And, I think you and I both know, and I try to tell my viewers this too, when I say an argument or when I talk about argumentation, I'm not talking about bickering and moaning on social media. We're talking about, okay, let's question things. Let's put up a hypothesis, make a statement, back it up with facts, and let's, put up countering viewpoints and get to the truth of some matters. And we all know that the comic book hobby, what makes it so great is that there's so many different personalities and different types of collectors that can do different types of things in it. It doesn't need to be one way or one thing. And so often or not, people don't see that. They get stuck in their ways and they're like, oh, speculators are bad. I just want to read my comics. And then there's people that are saying that, CGCs, but whatever the case may be, you know how it is. And I really try to be the optimist, right? I'm all about looking at the positives. Everybody in this hobby is adding something to it, for the most part. And I always say the businessman in me, anybody that's bringing money in the hobby is helping the hobby for the most part, right?
100%.
But with that being said, I will say, I went into this year and man, I can't believe we are almost halfway done with this year. It's absolutely nuts.
Wow.
But I went into this year saying that this is the year of the educated collector. And I was going to stand firm in my channel. And I was going to do more of what you just talked about, playing devil's advocate. I was going to be more of the person that can really see from both sides. And because there are things that concern me right now. And I think you were there when earlier this year, one of my big little, rants on Comic Book Canon, when you were a guest on Comic Book Canon, we were talking about the top 10 books of that week. And I really brought up my concerns on the reactionary buying, the FOMO. And I really dove deep into the psychological aspect of it, the socio-cultural aspect of it, and how it's really, this behavior is really ingrained in our society. And I think we've seen a lot happen with books, especially when it has to do with movies and TV shows and live action, that people take this behavior that is culturally acceptable of that me, gimme, now. And it's doing something in these books for a hot minute, but then when it's done, it all goes away, so to say. So I'm bringing this up right now, and we're calling the show F Your Spec, because while we as collectors or whoever it is, call them speculators or flippers or anybody that's buying these books in a spec market mentality, it seems that there's something out there that is saying, we really don't care about your spec, but we're going to either maybe pull your string, or, we're going to create rumors and it's not going to happen. And we're going to get you to react to it. You're going to spend your money and then you're going to eat it. Then you're going to fall flat on your face.
Yeah.
So with that being said, and we're going to do this. First off, Bronze Age, I'm going to ask you some questions to get your point of view on some things here. And then we're going to dive into, I got 6 books, folks, 6 books as examples. All right. And I didn't come to the show without notes. So first and foremost, we're going to dive into the notes here, because I'm going to address this like this, and then I'm going to right into getting Bronze Age, getting you to kind of state your, where you're at right now with the spec market. So the one thing that I really want to focus on is the fact that right now, the spec market is, in my humble opinion, really continuing to drive books to all-time highs. I mean, and you see it out there if you're watching the numbers, if you're watching some of these YouTube channels that focus on what these books are doing on the market, like all-time high sales and certain grades and et cetera. So we are, the market in general is kind of on a little bit of a dip, which I think personally can be healthy. It's not necessarily a bad thing. But even with that happening, we are still getting, anytime there's a rumor, anytime there's a trailer, something, the spec market continues to boom. So before I get into specific pinpoints, tell me a little bit about your overall feeling towards the spec market right now, especially when it pertains to movies and TV shows.
Yeah, for sure. So this is something, even before we talked about doing the show, it's something that I've thought about quite a bit. And I think that it's good to not get lost in the, can't see the forest for the trees kind of mentality that I think some collectors have been in for the last year and a half. Not all collectors, of course, but some collectors. And I think part of it is pulling back and seeing, this whole MCU generated spec. And you could say TV and movie in general, but let's face it, it's almost entirely MCU. Look at where that came from. Like, that's not something that's always existed. Obviously, the MCU hasn't been around forever. You take a book or a character like Iron Man, right? When Iron Man was never the most popular character in comics. He was, he wasn't a D-list character by any stretch of the imagination. He was an Avenger, but he wasn't all that until we got Robert Downey Jr. We had millions of people putting eyeballs on the character, and that drove a lot of interest into Tony Stark and Iron Man. And that helped his books. And that kind of, in my opinion, jump-started a lot of this MCU-based spec. And we saw, every time a movie was getting ready to come out, the MCU was putting out stuff at a super high level. Fans were pumped. You had millions of new fans coming into comic culture, if not comic books themselves, being interested in all this going on. And it's important just to kind of have an idea of like where this kind of the seed germinated for this type of collecting and this type of speculation. There's been speculators in comic books since the 60s.
Right.
It's nothing new, but how they have operated is totally different. And so I think that's important to keep in mind. And then we get to the current stuff. And when you saw the boom, you saw the real bull market come in 2020, it sort of made sense that it would move so quickly and we'd go from thing to thing. And there were apps and there were websites that were constantly talking about the hot books, and YouTube channels and influencers like ourselves. Even all those things make sense when you kind of add it all together. But now we're going into, most likely a bear market. And it's important to remember that, not all these characters are going to stick around very long. Not all of them are going to have a huge influence. And so really kind of approach things maybe a little bit more carefully is kind of my general thought on all this before we kind of dive into the details.
Right. You brought up a couple excellent points. Well, I mean, everything you said was excellent. But a couple of main points. I like what you said about certain characters not sticking around for a long time. We're gonna get into a couple aspects of that. I want to note too, like you said, speculating has been around since the 60s. I think people forget that way back even into the 60s, there was people looking at comics saying, that's speculating, just to have that thought of value collectible. Speculating could be me sitting right here saying, I have $100 in my pocket. Do I want to invest in, maybe I could get a couple of mid-grade Silver Age Amazing Spider-Mans. Maybe I can get a handful of Bronze Age Iron Mans. What should I spend my money on? And if I care, if how I spend my money simply is thinking what's going to grow my money, what's going to grow my investment, I'm speculating. That is speculation right there at its base core, because I'm speculating on what is going to be a better investment. So anybody that puts money into comics, and maybe you still care about reading them, maybe you care about collecting runs, maybe you collect favorite characters, but if you have even an inkling of thought of investment or return on the money that you put in, you're a speculator. You're speculating on comics. But to what you said too, Bronze Age, the level of how we spec and what factors that we gauge our spec have absolutely evolved, starting hugely with Iron Man. I will say this though, and I'm going to say this, and I'm going to let you jump into, because I got a question surrounding this.
Sure.
For me, when I became an adult, I got out of comic books because I went down a bad path in my life. Not because I was like, oh, comic books are, I wasn't consciously saying comic books are boring now, but comic books are for kids, or I'm done with comics. I literally just stopped doing anything because I was screwing my life up. When I became an adult, it was right around the time when, the X-Men movies were out, and then the Spider-Man movies were coming out. And I'll tell you, as much as, we could sit here and nitpick things about those movies, I love the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies. And Spider-Man being, my favorite superhero, even as a kid, that brought me back in. I started going to comic book shops again. I was going on eBay buying comic books. I remember it was after the first movie came out, I went on eBay. So this was what, 2002, 2003. This was one of my first big purchases as an adult. I bought the entire run of Web of Spider-Man. It was the entire run in one lot. Like near mint copies. I think I paid like $60 for it on eBay. Maybe not even that, in like 2002, 2003. And I did that because I went to the movies and saw Spider-Man and was like revitalized. It brought me back into these characters that I loved as a kid. And then, of course, Civil War came out in the comics, and that got me deeper into it. And then the MCU happened, and I'm like, I'm never turning my back on this. So with that being said, can we sit here and say that there is a huge positive here? That it is very positive for either old fans, folks that are our age, maybe that got out of it. Maybe we didn't get out of it, but it's just energizing us even more. New collectors, young and old. People our age that are getting into the hobby the first time, or people our age bringing their kids to these movies. Is there not a huge positive in how these movies are pulling us into the characters to then making us go and buy their books?
100%. And I think there's probably because of a lot of things going on, probably because of the age bracket of most collectors, we're kind of in that age. There's a lot of cynicism. And I totally get it. I get it 100% why there'd be so much cynicism, but I hear over and over and over again that, speculators and flippers and people that are investing in comics are ruining the hobby, kind of like a little bit like you were saying earlier. I hear that sentiment over and over and again. But the other thing I hear over and over again is collectors that had a large gap in their collecting in the hobby, and they've come back to it. Maybe it was because of the MCU, maybe it was because of the Fox movies, whatever it might be, right? The Sony Spider-Man stuff. And I think that gets lost in the details sometimes, that all this interest in comic books, in comic book movies, it's really, I think maybe some younger collectors too don't realize what it was like in the late 80s and the early 90s. Like, yeah, there was a lot of interest in comic books from people completely outside the hobby because of baseball cards kind of driving speculation of the hobby. But you still got made fun of at school if you were, a Spider-Man fan or whatever. Not all the time, but it definitely happened, right? Like you wouldn't like, pull out your nerd card and be like, well, I can tell you the entire roster of the X-Men and where their origins and all that. Like, no one was really doing that. And then, expecting to be homecoming king or whatever. These days, it's much more socially acceptable. It's kind of moved as a society over to this kind of normalizing nerd culture and kind of celebrating it almost. And depending on your perspective, there's always people that they want to be the special ones. They don't want a bunch of people liking what they like. That's a common thing too, right? But I think for most people, you'd have to admit that, that's going to draw money. That's going to draw new movies. That's going to draw new creators into the hobby. That's going to cause Marvel to release more titles or Image to release more titles that, even if they release 10 titles and 10 of them are junk, maybe one of them is the next Walking Dead or whatever you truly love, or Invincible. And I think that has a positive force. It's not all positive, but most of it I think is.
Yeah, good points. It's taken this to a whole nother level. I like what you said too, because I think we hear the term normies, right? Where you may get older diehard collectors that have been doing this for a long time, and they think that just because somebody loves these movies and enjoys the movies, oh, they don't even read comics, or they're normies. And But I think at the end of the day, if anybody is enjoying these characters on whatever level, whether it's in the books or just on the screen, or all power to them. Really, I mean, it's done so much, like you said, even cosplay, the way cosplay is just booming.
Yeah.
It's so much more accessible and acceptable now, all positives. But like you said, not everything is positive. And now we're gonna get into the thick of the F your spec and really how this has been having a negative hindrance, so to say, on the hobby. I really started noticing it for myself after the first Avengers movie, when we got our first sneak peek at Thanos. That's when, and especially for me, right there, we knew Infinity Saga, Infinity Gauntlet, Infinity War, those things that were right there when we were kids. And people started going for those books. That's what got me back into Warlock, so that's when I really saw it taking off in terms of us seeing a character on screen. But I mean, I gave an example of how even seeing Spider-Man on screen in those Sony films pushed me to buy more Spider-Man books at that point in time. Got me back into the hobby. And then from there, we started really getting excited, I think, from anything that hit the screen. Guardians of the Galaxy. And Guardians of the Galaxy was done so well. It'd be one thing, because I remember when Guardians came out, I never collected. I don't even think at that point, I don't even know if I owned a Guardians book. I might have owned a couple, but
by accident.
Yeah, by accident. Exactly. I never read anything, and I'm like, oh, Guardians of the Galaxy. Okay, well, like, yeah, cool, but really? And then I watched that movie, and I'm like, this is like such an epic Star Wars space saga type film with the perfect type of humor and characters and players. It's still one of my favorite MCU films. Winter Soldier came out, and Sebastian Stan is playing Bucky as Winter Soldier, and it's just like, dude. So we had all the reason to be so in awe at seeing these characters and wanting to go dive into the comic books. But even then, you didn't see the massive spikes, the immediate spikes as we're seeing now. And I'm not saying that the characters that we're seeing now, it's not justified that we're not getting just excited, right? I mean, sure, we could get just excited for these characters as well. But I think you pointed to one thing. We're getting so much more. It's, at a faster pace. I think that's affecting some things. But you also brought up another thing, which was the COVID era, in us right around the time when we were sitting at home on lockdown, and we started consuming so much more. We had all this more, expendable income, disposable income, and we started putting more money into the comic book market. And then you saw that hit, the train hit full throttle in like spring, summer of 2021. But another thing that propelled that was the return of the MCU, because we had nothing since 2019. We had no films, we had no TV shows for well over a year until we got WandaVision. But even right now, with a little bit of a dip in the overall market, the movie and TV, especially for the MCU, Spec is still out of it's crazy. It's still hitting high throttle. How would you explain that specifically, especially in terms of looking at the fact that we're going back to work? Inflation's killing us. Gas is, I cannot find gas for under $6 a gallon here at all, even at the cheapest spots. And we're spending money doing normal stuff again, yet specifically this crazy spec market is still booming more than ever. What are your thoughts specifically on that?
So here's the thing. Flip the logic. Those aren't exceptions to why this is happening. Those are reasons that are causing it. And what I mean by that is, what else has really become big over the last few years? Cryptocurrency, NFTs, whatever word you want to use for it, but like, Reddit stocks or whatever, GameStop, AMC. People are looking for, I hate this term, but get rich quick schemes, right? Like, I mean that like in a very general kind of way. Right. People are looking for that surefire thing. And many comic collectors, many speculators, because most of us are speculators. I firmly believe that. Even like you're talking about like that thing in the back of your head. Like, I was buying comics in the 90s thinking like, Cable 20, 30 years from now, maybe it'd be nice to have this New Mutants 87 or whatever, right? Even though I wanted it for my personal collection, I still, that was in my head, like I thought like, should probably buy this now, or whatever. But as collectors kind of go out there and they look at these books, they like to feel like they have the fast forward on the inside track, right? Like, we know, like what you're talking about when we see Thanos coming. If you're a real comic collector, you've been reading, and I shouldn't say a real comic, but if you've been reading comics for a while, if you read comics in the 90s, read the Infinity Gauntlet, Infinity War, you kind of know what's coming with that. You kind of know what characters you expect to come along. And you might be wrong sometimes, but you might be right more than you're wrong too, because you have this, like, I know where the storyline goes. There's no way they could do that story without this character we haven't seen yet. Well, you go grab 10 copies of that, right? Like, that mentality, I think, drives a lot of it for us, because inflation is going up, because people are worried about money. And there's a lot of people now, all you got to do, and I have no problems with the Whatnot app, but all you got to do is look at the Whatnot app and you see people are out there trying to sell comics to make money. And maybe they're doing it to fund their own collection. That's totally fine. Maybe they're doing it for families. That's fine too. But eBay, OfferUp, Facebook Marketplace, Instagram sellers, there are comic sellers everywhere. And I think that a lot of us want this kind of machine we've created to keep going because we enjoy the ride. And I think that's kind of all that together kind of creates this beast that comes out. Quinlan Voss gets mentioned in a Star Wars show, and all of a sudden those books start spiking. It's just this thing that's going to keep going for a while until people get bit enough times, that they might want to fall off that wagon. I think we're going to see this around for the foreseeable future as these projects continue to be popular.
Absolutely. And I just got to say, maybe the epitome of what we're talking about here. Yeah. I don't know if that speaks more toward probably to anybody giving up their baby for Jay. You got the right idea if you're trying to feed your kids, but those giving up the baby formula for the keys, now they got their priorities backwards, right? No, okay. All fun aside. Yeah. Great points. It's very interesting, but that even in the face of huge uncertainty in terms of economic uncertainty and financial uncertainty, it actually almost validates this crazy spec market, because there is a bit of what's I don't want to say comfort, because no investment is without any risk, even conservative investments, but there's something there with the tangibles right now. Even I mean, crypto literally crashed, and I'm not saying it's not going to bounce back, but I think it was a matter of 2 weeks there where crypto lost over 60%. That's a crash, and right now people are looking at comic books, and that's not the wrong thing, but maybe they're looking at it in the wrong way, because for me, if I'm looking at tangibles, again, I'm not looking for somebody's name to be mentioned in a Star Wars show and then get letting my emotions get out of control. I'm going back to that $100 in my pocket, maybe a couple of ASM Silver Age, run fillers or something like that. So to anybody out there that really is, to what we're saying and what Bronze Age just said, if you guys are really looking for tangible investments and are trying to look at the state of things and find something that is feasible for the future, I mean, look, I'm not going to hate on anybody if you can get ahead of the game and buy 10 or 20 copies of something for 50 cents or $1 each, and you think something's going to happen because you're playing off of that emotional, crazy FOMO market. Fine, right? Quick flip.
Yeah.
Hey, day traders, same idea.
Exactly.
But if you want low risk, if you don't want to get burned, you want low risk, and you have some type of love for this hobby, there are other books to go that are much more conservative. But we're going to start diving into some examples now of where you can get burned. And before we pull up specific individual books, Bronze Age, we're going to talk a little bit more. So there are a few key things that I think are driving this crazy spec market. And one thing I want to talk about before I talk about those specific things is I want to let it be known that we talked a little bit about it. There's a positive with us wanting to see these characters on screen, and we want to get excited about them, and we want to go back to the comic books for whatever reason. Maybe because we just want to read the stories. Maybe we just want to hold on to the books, put them in a frame and throw them on the wall, go and get them graded. Maybe they're a long-term investment. There's a lot of positives there. I'm just reiterating this. But we talked about kind of the risks involved and the emotions involved that make it risky and maybe not so positive at times. I am very much an advocate for, if you're going to speculate on MCU, movies, live action, DC, or whatever, but like we keep repeating, MCU is obviously the biggest player here. I'm all about doing it before anyone else.
Yeah.
Right? So let me give an example. Franklin Richards, Fantastic Four 245. First appearance of Franklin Richards as an adult, aka Avatar, has gotten so hot over the last couple of weeks when it was like a $2 book forever. So you think this is a good spec. You put all the pieces together, right? Like you were just saying, Bronze Age. You read these stories. You read these runs. You know which characters relate to which characters. You know which saga or event is directly correlated to certain characters. So you can look at everything that's going on in the MCU and you could say, Franklin Richards as an adult even. Okay, that makes sense. I'm going to go to my LCS. I'm going to see what they have in their back issue bins. And if I can find a few copies for $2, $3, maybe even $4, maybe I'll buy a few. Low risk. I'm not spending that much money. I got a few comic books that I'm going to set aside. Maybe if it gets hot, maybe if we get a trailer, I can then sell them and make a good amount of money in my pocket. But it moves so fast. Once somebody knows something, because we have YouTube, because we have apps, the needle moves so fast, one way to the other, that it's almost overnight that $2 book is now a $20, $30, $40 book. So, in my humble opinion, guys, if it's already on a top 10, if it's already being talked about on a top 10 YouTube channel or on an app, you missed the boat. Bronze Age, you have what are your thoughts just on being ahead of the curve, so to say?
Yeah, it's the famous, or rather infamous, Wayne Gretzky quote: "Be where the puck's going to be." And if you look at, flipping, speculating, investing, if you're that kind of collector, if that's part of your collecting makeup and part of the hobby for you, I think you have to be smart. You have to look long term. Like talking about Franklin Richards, I bought FF Annual 6 years ago because I was like, this character could come to the MCU someday. At the same time, sticking to Franklin Richards, who really thinks that we're going to see Franklin anytime soon?
Right.
Like, I don't. Like, I mean, let's say you know, he's a baby in the first Fantastic Four movie when that comes out or something.
Yep.
All right. I mean, you know, he's not going to be like on the team or something. Like it just we're going to get a classic Fantastic Four makeup, and then down the road maybe we'd, you know, move into some stuff like that, right? So it's good to think about it logically. Like think about the pace the MCU has moved at, right? It's not super fast. You know, there's definitely been curveballs thrown to us, but don't try to predict the curveball would be it's my philosophy. I mean, if people want to share that philosophy, that's cool, but I don't try to predict the curveballs. You know, I'm a kind of a low risk investor myself, kind of like what you were talking about earlier. And I think about like, you know, yeah, I saw somebody in the comments, you know, it went pretty fast. Like somebody said, hey, we didn't get Silver Surfer as part of the Infinity War. No, we didn't. But you're telling me we're not going to get Silver Surfer at some point?
Yep.
I mean, we are. Like it's guaranteed. Silver Surfer, Galactus, these are surefire bets.
Yep.
Now they're expensive surefire bets, but they're still going to go up in value. I mean, they will go up in value. I would bet, you know, as much as that book costs, if I had that money to go buy those keys right now, or Wolverine, you know, whatever you want to say, 180, 181, I don't care, whatever, or Giant Size X-Men, you know, when those characters come in a trailer, those books are going to climb. And it's a sliding scale. You go down from there and you have to think about the character. Frogman. Am I going to go nuts for Frogman? Like, I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to, but I think you got to take into account how that character is going to be perceived. So that's kind of my general philosophy on it.
Yep. We're gonna Ladonda here, Ladonde said, you know, just talking about kind of, you know, we talked about this too, about, you know, we get something out of seeing these characters on screen. This builds the hype. That's why it's so awesome. And I think both of us agree. But
yeah,
at what point do we feel like, and I love that you brought up Frogman right now, or Leapfrog, depending which one it is.
Yeah.
Like, are we past that? Are we so far past it's just, we've talked about it. We've addressed it in multiple pieces here during the stream already. I talked about it with the Spider-Man films. I talked about it, you know, when we seen Thanos and all that. Are we so far past it just being, oh, well, we get excited about seeing them? And I'm going to ask you this, but before you answer, Bronze Age, I'm asking the chat here. How many of you, and I don't know if that many people, I don't know if anybody here bought into the Frogman hype when we saw the She-Hulk trailer, but how many people here, if any, have seen a trailer or heard a rumor or announcement and went out and FOMO'd over? And when I say FOMO, this is what I mean by it, folks. You really got the itch to where you felt it. You felt a fight or flight response in your body to where you picked up your smartphone or you went on your computer, whatever, and you went on eBay, you went on Mercari or wherever, and you literally needed to have it right then. You ended up going on the auctions that were ending soonest, and you were bidding, and maybe even when it got down to the ticker, you know, the last few seconds, maybe you bid out of your comfort range, and you're like, oh man, shoot, I said I was going to get to pay 60, it went to 85. You know, you get in those moments, right? How many of you have really done that because you have this literal fear of missing out, because you think that there's the hype, here comes the hype, I got to get on that train before I miss it? So Bronze Age, to go to you, are we getting consumed now by that, to where it's not even about how many people truly care about Frogman? But both books, Leapfrog and Frogman, made top 10. And what was it? Because I just reported on it last week. What was it that Marvel team up one? Oh, what is it? I forget the number off the top of my head. The Frogman, first Frogman. What was it? $500 for 9.8. $500 for 9.8. Your thoughts?
Well, and by the way, I have to call out Dan De La Torre's comment here. I paid 60 cents for the first appearance of Frogman back in the day, and I think I overpaid. Golden comment. I just saw it as the chat was going. I love it. So I'm, you know, known or notorious or whatever for kind of being a FOMO buster. I even made a little joke Ghostbusters video as FOMO busters, and I still fall victim to FOMO. And I do it less and less these days, but I might have a couple copies of Superior Iron Man #1 back there, and I won't. This is not a spoiler for Multiverse of Madness. If anything, it's just something that doesn't happen in the movie. But let's just say if you went and check the prices on eBay, sold listings, you'd know that a certain Top Gun star does not appear in Multiverse of Madness to you know make that book spike, right? And you know, I paid like the going FMV for those books at the time. You know, like the day of that announcement, the Super Bowl ad came out or whatever, and people started freaking out because in my head, I'm like, man, if Tom Cruise started playing Iron Man, like that would be massive. And I regret it. I regret doing that. And that's just to me, like that's the lesson that we have to remind ourselves. I think most people that have ever given into FOMO really ask yourself, you know, did it pay off for you? And that's why I make the follow-up videos where I look back at these lists and say, you know, was that a smart investment? And I think the answer is kind of telling.
Well, let me ask you now, and then again, just to clarify even more, and we'll focus on this Superior Iron Man. So did you go into that? Did you get the FOMO because you wanted the book, thinking that it was going to have a long-term hold if it happened, and you were merely focused on getting it at a price before it grew in value, or and only focused on that value, on that return? Or were you really actually excited about owning that because you might see Tom Cruise as Iron Man?
So it's, in that particular example, I bought 2 copies, and I do that a lot when it's not a proven bronze or silver age key or something like that, where I can't afford 2 copies or whatever. If it's a modern book like that, I usually go after 2 copies if it's a book I feel strongly about, because if I feel strongly about it, it's usually because I'm interested in the idea of what could happen. And in this case, I'm not necessarily the biggest Tom Cruise fan in the world, but I loved Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man, and the thought of, you know, in my head, even at the time, I was like, it's probably a one and done if he comes in and does that role, but maybe he would keep doing it. And that would be pretty cool to me to own a copy of it and then have a copy as an investment too. So it was a little bit of both there. But you know, I think the driving force that made me go out and hit up a friend of mine on IG and go after a copy I saw him post was the thought of, boy, this is going to double, triple in value if we get closer and closer and get a teaser or get some kind of leak or whatever. And it was that fear in the word FOMO that really got to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And hey, you know, I'll say for myself too, I've been there, and you know, I've been there to a certain point where I find myself getting the FOMO feeling, and I don't care about the book, and that's where I have to stop myself. It's like, I don't care about this character, so what if I miss it? I think FOMO is okay if you're, you know, if you're smart and there's something there. You know, like I think your answer just showed that there's a balance there. You know, you would appreciate what would happen on the big screen, which would make you appreciate that book, and yet there's a potential return on investment in terms of the value as well. And I think that's where us as collectors, we can really balance that out. You know, if we focused and gambled on books that we still value on some sort of intrinsic level outside of a monetary level, you know, I don't think it would be that hard. And I think also the market would reflect that. The market would reflect more of a stability throughout these books when live spec happens, because or live action spec, excuse me, happens, because you'd have less people getting so deep into their emotions, only worried about the monetary gain or the monetary flip, so to say. So, all right, let's go into these aspects of what's driving the FOMO market. And then we're gonna go into our 6 books, folks. So there's 2 main real aspects of the spec market. One is confirmation. And confirmation can be either an announcement of a character. So what's an example? What's a recent example? An announcement
oh my God, I'm blanking.
of a character.
I guess you could say Jane Foster.
There you go. Yep. When we had
Thor,
Jane, when we had Natalie Portman go on the stage a few years back now, hold up the hammer, boom. Oh, we're going to get Jane Foster's Thor. There you go. That's an announcement of a character or a casting of a character. Maybe we already knew that they were going to do a Blue Beetle movie. Oh, DC's in production for a Blue Beetle movie for HBO Max. Oh, we get I forget his name, the actor from oh my goodness, Karate Kid Dojo.
Yeah.
Dang, my brain, dude.
Cobra Kai.
Wow. Cobra Kai. Jeez, brain fart. Oh, okay, cool. So there's that, and then of course the trailer, right? The trailer. So that's all one. That's all confirmation. Announcement of character, casting, trailer. Those are all confirmations where we know for a fact this character showing up. The second is rumor. Okay? Rumor or Easter egg. You could put Easter egg in that category.
Mm-hmm.
Rumor,
Beta Ray Bill.
Beta Ray Bill. Beta Ray Bill. Yes, you have an Easter egg. The Easter egg is true. It's there. It's a statue, but we don't know if this character is ever going to show up. So you get the rumors, though. Oh, Beta Ray Bill is going to show up in Thor: Love and Thunder. Oh, somebody's taken out. They graphically edited it, somebody out, like they did the other Spider-Man. In the Thor: Love and Thunder trailer, who is it? Beta Ray Bill. It's all rumor, right? Or you get scoopers, where I'm going to do a live stream about scoopers are only good for scooping dog duty. And if you're a scooper out there and you're watching this, there's a couple that I give some respect to. I cannot stand scoopers. Most of them,
yep.
And I'm going to say it, most scoopers are somebody that just said, I'm going to spend $12 on a domain name. I'm going to get a Wix page or a Wiggly page or whatever their names are, where you pay the $9.99 a month and you get to drag and click your website. Mm-hmm. And then you get the actual domain name and you call it geeksworldwide.com. And you're like, I'm an official source, but you're not. You're just, like some guy that has a couple of 15-year-old kids, and you write little blog posts on a website that looks like a real website because it's 2022 and not 2002 anymore. And you make announcements saying, official Marvel Studios confirmed this movie. No, they haven't. And then people go crazy. And we're going to bring up an example right there to that. So those are the 2 main things that are driving the market, right?
Chris,
so,
I gotta say this. I gotta say this real fast. I am sorry. I will not do this the rest of the show, but one quick tangent.
Yeah, no.
Something that's been bugging me recently, and you kind of just touched on it because this ties right into that to me.
Yes.
What is with the state of integrity in comic book journalism?
Yep.
I don't get it, and I'm not going to go on a huge tirade about it, but the Scoopers thing ties directly into that because that is ostensibly an arm of comic book journalism or nerd journalism, whatever you want to call it.
Yep.
And man, I just keep my desire for a trustworthy source that I can go to over and over again and not feel like it's 90% clickbait. I guess you could say that about journalism in general. That's a whole nother thing, but man, it's been so frustrating.
Yeah, no, totally. Look, it's interesting. And look, we're here on StreamYard. You look at media sources too. And yeah, we won't get too deep into this, but just to add a little bit, there's even websites and news sources that they can look like Fox and CNN and MSNBC. And hey, look, Fox and CNN and MSNBC, they're the big time multi-million dollar entities, and I still don't listen to the majority of what they say. But when we have the technology to get in front of a camera, a nice high-def camera, and we could put a little, American flag banner, or like maybe like a cityscape, and put the little, lower third down here, and we can sit here and look like we're actually an official news station out of a news headquarters, doing and reporting on like the war in Ukraine, or, Senate passes this, and we could do that, and we could do it all from real basic technology that is really cheap for anyone at this point in time. So I think that is really playing into it. People have the ability to mimic actual news sources, whether it's live streams or whether it is websites. And I think that really drives exactly what you were just talking about. But I'm going to use, it's so funny that I use Comic Tom as an example a lot, because obviously he's one of the big dogs in this comic book community. And, people love him or hate him. I have nothing but respect for the guy. But he gets a lot of hate because he's like, oh yeah, you're in cahoots with Key Collector, and you're driving the market. And we know that Comic Tom, he's a character that does what he does, and he's probably maybe the godfather of these top 10 lists, and they do the record breaking sales and all those things. But so many people turn to people like him just for having a YouTube channel and talking about these books. And I'll still say this, anytime I talk about him, he's not there telling you to buy books. He's reporting on the news. But I want to address anybody that has ever said that YouTubers in general are manipulating the market, or even Key Collector, where you have an app that has a link to eBay, and they do all these push notifications. And why doesn't anybody really talk about scoopers and the scoopers themselves? I don't know about you, but for me, when we talk about people influencing the market, that never comes up. It never comes up. And I'm sorry, I don't like to name drop. I am very cautious about when if I have an issue with something, I'll try to address it without putting anyone on blast. But I put Geeks Worldwide on blast, and I'll put them on blast until they want to come to my channel and have a conversation with me. But for what they did with there's a couple of things, but especially with the Midnight Suns, and the way that they handled it. I don't know if you went to their Twitter after they got called out, in the unprofessionalism and the complete utter disrespect for the community that they had. I don't hear anybody, like when Spec gets out of control, why aren't we holding these scoopers accountable? But yet we just want to talk about an app or a YouTuber that says, hey guys, this book has hit a record sale, or it's increased 3 times. It's super hot. But nobody's saying, well, it's because this website, Geeks Worldwide, that has no credibility, no show of face. We don't even know who these people are. We don't know how they're connected in the industry, and they're pumping this up, acting like Kevin Feige, knocked on their door last Sunday morning and sat down and had Eggo waffles with them.
No, for sure. That's a great point. I mean, I think it's just a lot of it probably comes down to people love to focus, and it's easy to say Key Collector equals bad. And I think, there's logical arguments that can be made on that, but it's kind of like a left hand and right hand thing. Like a lot, not all the time, but a lot of time when they're saying, our sources or, rumors have indicated, that is the ultimate source that they're going after. So it's something that should definitely be on people's radar, for sure.
Yeah, definitely, man. All right. Well, thank you for bringing that up, because I mean, that's very important. We could go on, we can do a whole show about just the state of and the influence of scoopers alone on the spec market. But we're gonna bring up some books, and we're gonna get back to the main aspects. We talked about confirmation and what that consists of, and then rumor, the Easter eggs. We're gonna bring up some examples. So let me share my screen here and bring these things up. We got 6 books to review here, and we're gonna start out with, hey. Why not? And look, I'm going to tell you guys right now, if you have not seen Multiverse of Madness, why we're talking about this book, you might want to take a step, go get something to drink or eat, get a snack, or mute us for the next 5 minutes or so while we talk about this book, because there will be spoilers. All right. I let it be known. We're moving on. Okay. All right, Bronze Age. We got New Avengers number 7. First appearance of the Illuminati. We're going to look at this. We're going to look at the numbers first. So a 9.8 fair market value during the time of the trailer. So that 2-month period when we got the couple of trailers and everything. These are fair market values. So I took the average of all the sales. We're not focused on a high or a low or anything like that. During that period, 9.8 fair market value was at $575. Current fair market value over the last few weeks, $232. That's a 60% decrease in value. The most recent sale didn't even hit over 200. It hit 193. Now, this goes to something that I want to talk about, and we kind of brought it up about how long are these characters going to last, right? So we know the Illuminati shows up, and they're like a spoof. They're a bit of comedic spoof and a spoof for us to see how badass Wanda is. And look, for me, I thought it was super awesome. It's a multiverse. We can bring some of these characters back properly. It was a nod. I mean, you had the the 92 X-Men animated series music come in when you have Professor X roll in. Freaking awesome. And then Wanda goes ham.
Yeah.
No more Illuminati. Everyone that was paying $575 for this book in a 9.8, you can't even sell it now and get half your money back. Bronze Age. Thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, this is that book that I saw a mile away as something that I wanted to steer clear of. I mean, everything, price is always a factor, right? Like if I was in a LCS and I, that trailer had come out and I saw they had this book marked at $5 or $10,
right,
I probably would have bought it because I would have been interested in maximizing some return on that book or whatever. I have no qualms with that. But pretty much everywhere had this book, raw, you were seeing it 30 to 60 or more. It just screamed of a book that, if you were getting ready to watch Doctor Strange, what did you think was going to happen? Like the Illuminati was going to show up and they were going to be a driving force for the next 10 movies? Maybe, but I didn't see it as being a thing. And also it's a group, and groups just aren't as easy to get behind for the most part compared to characters. Characters are what draws people for the most part. And of course, there's some amazing characters that are part of the Illuminati or could have been part of the Illuminati, depending on, what you thought the group makeup was going to be. Right. But that to me just says those characters that you're thinking about matter more than this book necessarily for the long-term health and future of the MCU. So I think you really had to kind of ask yourself, what were you hoping to do with this book? And of course, when you talk about any of these books, I do want to kind of, put a shout out to that collector that's buying this and they're not thinking about reselling it. They're not thinking about flipping it. They're not thinking about speccing on it. I love the Illuminati and I slept on that book. I get it. And I don't want to down, because that can be a real kind of pain you feel if you overpay for a book that you love. But maybe that's a learning lesson for the future, kind of wait on some of these books, because I bet you long-term, a lot of them drop, because I've done the research. A lot of them drop long-term.
Yeah. And hey, patience. I just dropped the video the other day about, 5 tips to save you money and to better strengthen your collection. And number 1 was patience.
Yeah.
You know, we get into this FOMO, but we don't realize that, look, sometimes you miss the boat. But sometimes, especially in this day and age of the spec market, if you really cared about Illuminati and you simply missed it and you saw this book booming, wait. Because look, if they ended up sticking around and being something, the book may not have had a 60% drop, but it probably would have leveled out or even cooled off a little bit because the movie's going to be gone and we may not see them for another year or two. So again, you just be very careful when you think you missed out, because waiting could pay dividends, because this is a 60% drop. This isn't even indicative of the, you know, the dipping market here and there. You know, we talked about the market just kind of leveling off a little bit. Because remember, this book boomed after the leveling off of the market. And now it's already dropped 60% because guess what? People went and saw the movie. Oh, they were just there for 2 minutes and boom, Wanda had her way with them. And then no more. Oh, shoot. So you know what these flippers are thinking? Now I got to sell it so I can at least get some money back. And now supply is way up here and demand is way down here and nobody wants to touch it. So there you go. So this is a case of F your spec, because everyone's getting hyped about something coming, but then it wasn't what you thought it would be, right?
Yeah.
Blink of an eye, it's gone. So
bonus tip on this one: if you're thinking now, like you are that collector that wants this book, even 98 232, that recent sale 193. Little advice: go look for a raw that somebody's trying to move that's in really high grade and get your own 98 for a cheaper discount.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you brought that up, Bronze Age, because I've never bought a 9.8 book in my life. I don't think I ever will. And especially for modern books, I always recommend go. You could buy like 3 books of these raw that might be 9.8 potential, press and clean them, send them to CGC, CBS, CBCS, whatever. And even if one comes back, you could probably make money doing it that way. So absolutely. Let's move on to this next book. This is very similar to where this was a confirmation. The Timekeepers. It was confirmed, but if you watch Loki, they were confirmed, but then they didn't turn out to be what we thought they would be, similar to the Illuminati. They were robots, and they broke the robots. No more Timekeepers. So this one really boomed. West Coast Avengers 62. First appearance of the Timekeepers. Average fair market raw during the show was 23. Current average is $7. And I'm not helping myself because I got one for sale right now. I got $10 on it. It's a higher grade.
I got one for $9 if you get. No, I'm just kidding.
70% decrease in value. So again, you know, a very similar thing where we get so hyped. Anything. And I mean, how many people really cared about the Timekeepers or even knew about the Timekeepers before the Loki show? And when they turn out to not be what they were, everyone was like, oh, well, there's nothing there.
Bingo. Like, I mean, just try to imagine yourself ever like uttering the words, man, the Timekeepers were so cool.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. Okay. Again, you know, and I'm being cynical now. I talked about that earlier. I am being cynical, but you know, what were the odds that they were going to come out and you're going to be like, that's really cool? There was a pretty slim chance. Like, what was the best case scenario, you know?
I mean, the best case scenario, I guess, were they were not robots and they were the real things. Right?
they actually were in the show. Yeah.
Right. But I mean, but to your point, it's like even then,
yeah,
it's like, and that's where it's like, we seriously, when we see, we're not even Betty Brant or Ben Urich. We're talking about some random guy that works at the Daily Bugle that was in the back of a couple panels in some Spider-Man book shows up, or we think it's that guy. You know, he was never named in the comic books. It's just this guy. Maybe he has blonde hair and he's an older guy. And we see in a trailer some blonde-haired older guy like carrying papers at the Daily Bugle in the back in a Spider-Man trailer. Oh, there's that blonde guy that works at, it's not even some character that we know that works at the Daily Bugle. And we're going off and finding their first appearance and spending, you know, it's increasing 5-10% or 10 times over, excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, at what point do we, and that's where I go back to where I asked you the question, Bronze Age, and I asked everyone here in the chat. At what point do we go back to where I saw Spider-Man on the big screen and it brought so much to me that I went back to the comics? I saw Thanos on the big screen and wow, I never cared about Guardians of the Galaxy, but I seen him on the big screen. I'm like, man, I got to go find those comic books. At what point are we just seeing the random guy at the Daily Bugle and specking on it?
Yep.
And spending crazy money just because we saw them in a trailer or we thought they were going to be in a TV show or a movie. It's crazy. It's crazy.
I mean, I guess they could have been really cool time cops.
What if the Timekeepers were Sandra Bullock and Sylvester Stallone?
Oh, you want Demolition Man on this?
Demolition
Dude.
Man.
Well, if they got Wesley Snipes in there, oh my God.
That'd be dope. All right, guys, we're gonna move on. Oh, let's talk about it. We were talking about this book. Let's look at it. So now this is different. The first two we used were these things, these spec showed up in the TV shows in the movie, but they just didn't pan out. This is one that was what? Rumor, right? Superior Iron Man #1. First time we see the Superior Iron Man. 9.8 sold for $500 on 5/2. Keep that date in mind because that was what? Right before the release of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Guess what happened after that? No 9.8s have sold. Average fair market value raw after the trailer for a matter of 2 months, $45. Current average fair market raw since the release of the film, $17. That is a 62% decrease in value. Bronze Age, how you doing on those two books?
Well, you know, it's the beauty of it, like what we were talking about earlier, right? It is the flip side of the fact that, like, I don't mind that this book is in my collection. And it also, you know, when I say I bought it at the F&B that it was going for at that time, this isn't when it got to like 40 or 50 bucks. This is when it was like, I think it was like at 20, 25. Yeah, that's definitely more than this book raw was worth at the time. In actuality, now that we know in hindsight he's never coming, or he didn't come in that movie at least. Yeah. But at the same time, I don't mind having this book. One of the two I bought was actually the Hastings variant, which is a chain of stores that I used to go to all the time. So that's the one that I was going to hold on to because I just thought it was cool. It's like I didn't have a Hastings variant in my collection. When I lived in Idaho, I went to that chain all the time, and I had like a lot of fond memories for it. So it's kind of like this weird part of my collection now that I can kind of own. But if that wasn't the case for me, boy, I'd be sitting on a couple of these books, and I'd be not too happy about it, man. Like if that's all there was to it. I mean, I guess here's the silver lining. It is kind of a cool storyline, but yeah, you got to be really careful with these. You could get hold. I think Reggie says you catch a brick sometimes, right? You could catch a brick on some of these if you're not careful and you're not really thinking about, you know, when I go into this, do your research beforehand. Think about what the best and worst case scenario could be, and maybe where this is going to logically fall. And then if all that goes to pass, do you still want it in your collection? Do you still want to own that book? And are you comfortable with what you paid for it? All relative to price, of course.
Yep. Wise words. Absolutely. All right. Next up, folks, we got X-Men #4. This is similar. So this is similar to Superior Iron Man. This is first appearance of Omega Red. This pertains to the Falcon and Winter Soldier show. Huge talk that we're gonna see mutants. Oh, also Black Widow. It was for both. We had Omega Red, thinking that Black Widow might introduce Omega Red, and then it was or was it I forget which one came out first. No, I forget.
It was Falcon.
Falcon and Winter Soldier came out first, right? Because Black Widow got postponed.
Yep.
So we thought we might see Omega Red in either of those properties. Didn't happen. So I took numbers from the show's release leading into that summer, and the fair market value for a 9.8 was, again, this is average. I mean, this had books selling for $500. There was a couple that hit like around the $500 mark, but those are highs and outliers. Mm-hmm. Fair market value 365, current 184. That's a 50% decrease. Similar trend with the raws. Average raw during the show 65, average raw current fair market value 32, 51%. So let's talk about this Bronze Age in a little bit of a different perspective, though.
Yeah.
You got burned here. I mean, you never know. Tom Cruise, he might show up as Iron Man one day. You never know. We got the multiverse.
Never know.
But when you look at a character like Omega Red, I love Omega Red. I think Omega Red's a dope character. We could still get Omega Red in the MCU. So I think that kind of sheds at least a little perspective on looking at where this book has been and where it is right now.
Yeah. Well, and this is another one that I have some personal history with, because, I'm an X-Men guy. That's my thing. And, this run of X-Men was my bread and butter for sure. I've definitely gone back and done a bunch of Uncannies and a bunch of other stuff that I love from before this. But this was when I was in my prime as a kid, buying, collecting. I had, a childhood copy of this. Rumors were going around. I was lucky to find a bunch of copies of this at a good price. I got most of them slabbed.
Nice.
I was sitting on, I think I had at one point like 4 9/8, a couple 9/6s, a couple 9/4s. One of those was a newsstand. And honestly, like, they came back because, this was when CGC was taking forever to get books back. I've honestly still done pretty well moving some of those. And I'm holding on to some of them because Omega Red, this is that flip side. Omega Red is a cool character.
Yes.
He has a lot to like. Now, he's not a world-breaking character. Right. He's not a major villain, but people, if you're a Wolverine fan, mm-hmm. and you think about Wolverine in the MCU, I could definitely see a Wolverine versus Omega Red fight being really fun to portray on screen, right? So that could still happen. And even if that never happens, he's a cool character that some people still really appreciate. So this is one of those scenarios where I think you're doing a little bit better off if you had invested in this. Maybe not at the peak. You're never going to feel happy if you bought the peak and you're trying to sell at the dip, right? That's the worst case scenario. But there's a lot more potential here, at least. And then there's a lot more to feel better about if you got burned.
Yeah, I agree. And there's a couple of things, and we're going back to everything we talked about. One of them is the excitement. I think there would be, that real excitement for this character if we knew that they were coming. It would, like, if I got a trailer, especially if it involved Wolverine. I mean, if the X-Men, if there's no Wolverine yet and we get introduced to Omega Red, still cool. If Wolverine is there, and even more. So as a fan, that kid in me is going to do exactly what you said. I'm going to be like, yo, let me go pull out my book and show it off. Like, there's that. Timekeepers, I don't know if there's anybody that could have said, oh my God, they were my favorite as a kid.
Yeah.
But there's also, there's that intrinsic value. This industry, look at the numbers right now. A 9.8 90s book selling for a fair market value average of 184 in a 9.8 is not a measly book. That's solid. That's a good price for a 9.8 book. Average raw,
still highly printed too,
and high, exactly. So this is a key book, and it's going to stay a key because people care about this character. Not as much.
Not only that, dude. Look at the cover; it's an awesome Jim Lee cover, right? Like,
absolutely, yeah.
You can't lose with a good cover, like, not completely, right? Like, because people are cover buyers. At the end of the day, that's what book covers, comic book covers. That's what draws a lot of people in, even if the guts aren't even necessarily that exciting. And in this case, they actually were a good story still. So
absolutely, man. So I think, again, for all you watching, there's depth here, there's perspective. And like Bronze Age said, just to reiterate, it never feels good to, buy the peak, especially on a dip. But it just goes to show, this is something that you could have really felt intrinsically connected to, patience can pay off. If you really cared about this character, because you could be buying it at half the price right now than buying it when all those rumors were circulating. So,
and I gotta agree with chat here real fast. A couple people in chat calling out X-Men 5's cover. You're 100% right. X-Men 5 is a way better cover. It's iconic, but that would also be the first, like, maybe full cover appearance of Omega Red. Plus, this is my favorite thing about the book. It's first Maverick. I love Maverick.
Yeah. I have my own copy of X-Men 5, and I had to buy my son's copy because it was a better copy, and I wanted it so bad. I wanted a really near mint copy, so I had to buy it off of him.
Yeah, I've got a few just because I wanted that, that really high grade. So
awesome. All right, we got a couple more. So this is like the birth of it all right here. Mephisto. This is when I think we really saw it was the first show, WandaVision. First MCU property since COVID. And everyone said, Mephisto.
Mephisto's in the trees, man.
Silver Surfer number 3, first appearance. Let's look at these numbers. I did a couple of grades here. Similar trends. 7.0 during the show, 1380. Current 975. That's a 29% decrease in value.
Yep.
9.4, 6,840 right now, 5,130. That's a 25 decrease in value. Very similar decreases in the grades. Here's my thoughts on this. This is another thing. Mephisto could still show up. I think it's inevitable
100%.
that Mephisto is going to show up. Absolutely. I think Mephisto is a dope villain character. So there's a lot of that there too, as well with this. This is a Silver Age book, a Silver Age key. WandaVision came out kind of at the beginning of that peak of that everyone's money was being put into comic books. We saw the peak of the entire market. To see this book dip 25 to 29%, to me, isn't very alarming, even with the crazy rumor mill and how crazy it was.
Yeah.
In the simple fact that it didn't pay off. So what's your thoughts there just on this book, in looking at the rumors being so extreme, not paying off, and where this book's kind of sitting right now?
Well, and before I dive into my thoughts entirely, to echo somewhat you said, and then also to echo Swagglehouse in the comments over here said, the reality is you haven't lost anything until you sell. It's all unrealized. Timekeepers, Superior Iron Man, Illuminati, anything can still happen. And that, out of all the examples that he listed, you'll add this one in. This is probably still the most prime example of where we're I would say the likely meter that we're going to see Mephisto at some point is pretty high. I mean, you're talking about an established character. You could easily, maybe it wasn't WandaVision, but you could easily see Mephisto being like the puppet master pulling the strings in a Disney Plus show. He could carry a movie as a villain behind the scenes, very much like a Mysterio like character where it was, an Agatha all along thing. Right.
Yeah.
And I could see that happening for sure. And again, not only that, I shouldn't say you can't, you really shouldn't lose, because you're talking about a well-respected, established Marvel villain that is of a vintage that's definitely going to carry weight going forward. He's had so many storylines that have been, fleshed out. And I think that's the kind of thing where it's like, if you're trying to sell me on a book to invest in, for example, I'm going to be way more attracted to this as kind of like the Apple of stocks, sort of in a way, maybe not the Apple, but it's up there, right? Like, it's a proven property.
Right.
It's something that has that chance to go forward. And not only that, collectors 10, 20, 15 years from now are going to be looking for a book like this anyway.
Exactly. I think that's a key point right there, because you talk about risk and intrinsic values and everything, I have no doubt in my mind that this book, at some point in time in the future, even if Mephisto never shows up, that 7.0 hitting that 1380 mark, it's going to be there again. That 9.4 hitting that 6840 mark, it's going to be there again, because that's what Silver Age keys like this do, no matter what. It might take a couple years if there's no spec movie hype around it, but it's going to get there because these books are going to continue to increase. So I absolutely agree with everything you said. Your assessment, I think, is spot on. And another one where you don't have to feel too bad, at a loss. It's like, I mean, you said Apple, but even Apple's down right now.
Right.
Hopefully you bought Apple 3, 4, 5 years ago. If you bought it though 2 years ago, you're probably in the red, but it's gonna bounce back and you're gonna be okay. And you haven't lost too much, so yeah. So again, similar situation with Omega Red, but on a different level, because you got to look at all the other intrinsic properties, being a Silver Age book instead of a 90s mass produced book, and being a bit of a bigger character, obviously, than Omega Red here. But of course, you're putting more money down. You're already putting more money into this book, so that could be a little more risk for you if you're on a budget.
So Chris, I have a question for you real fast, man. So let's say you're the biggest Mephisto fan in the world, right? And let's say you've been dreaming of owning this first appearance of Mephisto for a long time. What do you do as a collector right now? Like, when are you timing your buy on this book, you think?
Well, you know what? This is a very good point, and I'm so glad you brought this up, because I wanted to bring this up, and I don't know if I would have remembered. So looking at these dips, right? Would it be good to buy right now? I mean, we could look at all of these, and we could go through all of these. I would still stay away from this. Look, if you could find this book for $10 or under, hey, you know what? You're spending $10 on a couple ice cream cones these days. So this, again, hey, if I really like the Superior Iron Man character, and I could spend $20, not bad.
There's also another first appearance in Superior Iron Man too, like Abomination or something like that. I think a teen Abomination or whatever. So
for sure. And then again,
you know what I'm clinging to.
You can ask the same question here, because all the things we talked about, it could be a decent time to buy. We don't have the X-Men yet. We know they're coming. Now it's a matter of measuring the yardstick, so to say. If you get, or should I say, it's a teeter-totter, measuring, you're walking the teeter-totter.
Mm-hmm.
Are you on one end? When it teeters one way, it's downward. When it teeters the other way, it's upward. Where are we? Where's the weight right now? Are we still more, to where we have wiggle room to where it's going to tip down more before it starts tipping upwards? Or are we now kind of standing in the middle and about to start tipping it upwards again? You never really know. For me, for this one, maybe I'd wait some time still, because I think we are still so far out from X-Men. With this one though, and this has been one that I've eyeballed over the last couple of years, I just don't have the budget for it. For me, as a collector though, I'm looking at low grade raw. I don't care. If I could find a 2.0, 3.0 in this book for a good deal raw, it might be a good time to buy, right? Look at this 7.0, for under $1,000. If I had $1,000 to spend and it's not breaking my bank and I'm okay with spending that, I wouldn't think that it's a bad decision to pay under $1,000, just under $1,000 for this book in a 7.0 right now. I think if we see Mephisto, it could be sooner than later. I think Silver Surfer is going to be coming into the MCU at some point. So you got these early Silver Surfer, Silver Age Volume 1 books as well. So that means something. So yeah, to answer your question, I'm not saying it's the best time because you never know the future of any market,
Right.
but it's definitely a much better time than it was a year ago.
Yeah, and I'm right there with you. Like, I mean, I'm not really looking to pick up this book, just based on the scratch that would be involved and to dive into it. But I think I would definitely want to hold off for a little bit, just in my personal opinion. I have a feeling we're probably up for a little bit more downturn in the market. Maybe not a lot or anything. Like, I'm tend to be more like we're probably in a correction kind of a thing here than anything else. But it is interesting, right? Because like I think what project would he likely appear in? Maybe the Agatha show. You know, you got a while before anything's going to happen, though. I think so. There's no harm in waiting. But I love your answer. Thanks, man.
Absolutely. All right, guys, we have one more book, and this kind of plays into something that we kind of brought up earlier. And yeah, Ghost Rider 28. This is the first cameo of the Midnight Suns. You know, 31's their first full appearance, but this one was the money book. You know, I do. Yeah. Is this one the first appearance of Lilith, or is that 31? Is it
That's
this one?
31, I think.
31, yeah. So it's very interesting that this book was the money book. And as you all know, it was Geeks Worldwide. Geeks Worldwide, and only Geeks Worldwide, came out saying,
"Oh, sorry, it is this book. My bad. It is this." Oh,
Lilith in this one too. Okay, good. Yeah. Okay. So Geeks Worldwide came out, and like I said, they have this website. It looks pretty professional. They don't get, there's like no traffic to the site at all. They're on Twitter. A couple people are on Twitter, and they don't have, like, nobody likes their, not many people like their stuff, and they don't really have a following on Instagram either, from what I remember. And they said, confirmed. It is confirmed that we are getting a Midnight Suns movie from Marvel Studios, and it is confirmed that it's gonna. They said it was gonna start filming. I think they said in fall of 2021 for a 2022 release. You guys could probably go, unless they pulled it. I still have screenshots, by the way. I should have pulled them up. When I called them out on it, and you know what made this worse is that big YouTube channels that have 500,000 subscribers, like Cosmic Wonder, even Everything Always, I believe it was, that's got like 1 million, they ran with it. And it's clickbait because they put it in their titles, Midnight Suns confirmed. And then when they do their video, they say, sources say, but their sources are a source that isn't a credible source.
Yep.
And people feed off of this and eat it right up. Now, I said it, but I did a video for this right away and came out and called them out. Actually, I'm mistaken, guys. I take this back. It was Geeks Worldwide that did the World War Hulk. I apologize. Wow. It was Geeks Worldwide that did World War Hulk for the 2021 with the 2022. It was that hashtag. Same thing, though. I'm not going back on my words. Same idea. I'm not saying that they, who knows? Now, the chances of a World War Hulk happening are even more slim. They've already dived into that story, part of that story arc
quite a bit.
With the rights with Universal, I don't know. The problem is that they said it was confirmed and it wasn't. And now we're halfway through 2022 and we realize that they were wrong. It was that hashtag show that did the Midnight Suns. But the same idea, they have like no following at all. And I believe like they have like maybe I think 20,000 subscribers on YouTube. They maybe bought, you could do that. You could buy subscribers. I'm not going to get into that. But they get no views. They get no views. They get like 40, 70 views on a video. But this video had like a couple thousand, but it's only because you get these 400,000, 500,000, 1 million subscriber YouTubers like Cosmic Wonder, and everything always running with what that hashtag show talked about. And they said similar thing. Confirmed. Marvel Studios confirmed. Our inside sources confirm. Who's your source? I'm not sitting here saying that a Midnight Suns TV show or movie can't happen or won't happen. It would be awesome if it happened, and it could very well happen. We got Blade coming. You know? I'm sure we'll get Ghost Rider at some point in time.
Well, and it's important to point out that part of what got this book going too was the video game. That's part of what really that was kind of to me the spark to the gasoline for this one. And that was one of the stranger things to me, because it's like, when has a video game really ever moved the needle on a book long term at all?
Well, Miles Morales, the Spider-Man video game, I think is the only other example that comes to my mind.
Yeah, but even that,
there's more validity there though, because that's a whole different kind of beast. I think,
well, yeah, but and see, like, you could say it's because of the video game with Miles Morales. You could do the same thing for this book, but it's man, that character has so much more potential on the big screen long term, I think. So,
and there was so much more going on at once. There was Into the Spider-Verse, the announcement of the video game. There was so much going on, and that's I think that deep love for the character, and like you said, the future potential. But with this book, but I watched it. I remember when this happened last year, and I tracked the numbers. After that hashtag show released their video, nothing moved on the market and sales. It was when Everything Always and Cosmic Wonder and all those other YouTubers talked about it. Once their videos were released, then they went and people started buying up this book, and the price shot up like that. And I watched it happen. I was looking at the sales dates in terms of the videos releases. So looking at it, we're going to look at these numbers now. 9.8 fair market value. Oh, sorry. That's not during the show. I apologize. That's when this rumor hit. $381. Current 9.8, 165. That's a 57% decrease in value. And I think because a lot of people realize that we're over a year out now since I think this happened, and there's been no official word. There's been no follow-up. And this is my problem with scoopers is this. When we finally get an announcement for Midnight Suns or a real Easter egg or something that shows that they're happening, those scoopers are going to come out and say, see, I was right. No, you weren't. You just threw, like my partner Jeff or Comic Book Ken says, you're throwing, monkey poo at the wall, hoping that it'll stick.
And a broken clock's right twice a day anyway.
I mean, right. So, I mean, it's like inevitable that a lot of these things are going to happen. You didn't call it. You were just on your BS. So, I think this is one of the biggest. We looked at all these different things. Spec that didn't pan out. Rumors that never happened. And then this is rumor mixed with really bad sources driving the market with false information that drives those rumors to almost, in my humble opinion, an unethical level. But and that's why I put this book last, because I think out of all of these, this is, I think, the biggest red flag is a book like this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I want to point out one of the comments I just scroll by from Killheart Comics. There was the Morbius Spec also made this book jump, and that's the other thing to think about is not, we talked about it a little bit with kind of that the Timekeepers, and it doesn't really pan out the way you expect, but like also it could be the character you really expect. They could be hitting the big screen in a major motion picture, and people could not like it, and you could get holding something that just no one cares about. Now, it's not the first appearance of Morbius, but it goes along with that. Like, that's, all this fuel to the fire, and we look at it, and then it's like, well, is it going to be any good? Because I think that whether or not you agree with this, I think most of us can admit that MCU isn't necessarily what it was when it was firing on all cylinders and you had Avengers coming out. I mean, there's been stumbling blocks all along the way, and I think people kind of forget about some of those stumbling blocks. But there's been a lot of criticism levied towards MCU projects recently. I think that it's kind of fair to say that maybe the MCU, in a lot of collectors' minds anyway, might be in a little bit of a slump itself, and that is something to be super careful about when you're thinking about these books. Really have done your research, really be prepared to hold on to that book if it doesn't, what you're hoping to come to fruition doesn't come to fruition right away, and kind of be mindful of what's going to happen to that book in the future if that doesn't come to pass.
Yeah, absolutely. So, all right, guys, we're gonna start wrapping up here, and I'm gonna finish on a couple of very important points. One is, I've heard like, oh, Marvel's trolling us. Like we have the Doctor Strange poster with the shattered glass and all these, and we're looking for so much stuff. But I think they realize that, look, people like Easter eggs, and why not, right? And then there's the question: is Marvel Studios purposely driving things to drive the comic book market? I mean, and look, I think absolutely, especially with you got Feige over heading the comic book side of things as well.
Yeah.
And I think that's a natural, fundamental business move that nobody can be mad at. Are they purposely driving up prices of spec books and then taking them? No, that is on us, because I think what Marvel's doing, they're using as many properties as they can. And Bronze Age, you said early in the show, and I really want one of these to be one of the ending points, because it's very important for all of you to listen to. Not everybody or every character that's introduced in the MCU is going to be a big player. So when you value the first appearance of the Timekeepers next to the first appearance of Mephisto, you got to weigh their weight, okay? They're never going to add up the same. Or when you have when you have side characters, like, I don't have anything laying around where I could think of some, but if we get Generation X in a movie, and even if it's a X-Men, I don't know, say they're not getting their own movie, but it's an X-Men movie and we have some of the Generation X characters. Oh, cool. But are they going to be Wolverine? Are they going to be Phoenix and Jean Grey and Cyclops? No. And I think we really need to start valuing how we spec at these announcements of these characters the same way to how we value the books before. Stop. We're doing it backwards.
Yeah.
If before any of the movie hype, we valued the first appearance of Venom way more than the first appearance of the Timekeepers, we need to keep that ratio for when we get a Venom in a movie or a Timekeepers in a TV show or a movie.
Yeah.
Because the comic, it's expanding so fast. They're going to keep creating more and more characters. And the movies are going to be produced almost at a similar level. I mean, that's what the TV shows are doing. They are being produced at a similar level as the comic books. Every episode is an issue, right? Every series is a run. And the movies are like the main titles or the saga, like the story arcs, or not the story arcs, but the team ups or something like that. And I think we really have to put it in perspective. And I think one last thing I want to say, and then I want you to jump in on this, Bronze Age, is it's to what you were just saying too. I personally think while that love for these characters, a lot of us are still seeing, whether we're old collectors, new collectors, young collectors, we see these characters and we get excited and we want to turn to the books. But I think there is two things happening right now. And this is really going to predict the state of the spec market in the future. I think there's a lot of people that are still out of control with their FOMO. They are absolutely out of control. Fight or flight. Now. I need it. I can't miss out. But then you got a large proportion of people that are getting burnt out.
Yep.
And that are turning away from this and saying, not only am I not collecting like this, I don't even want to talk about it like this. I don't even want to talk about comics like this. And I think those two things are happening. They're two extremes that are happening at the same time. And only the future holds. But I don't know how those two things are going to meet up in the future. But Bronze Age, I'll let you jump in on a couple of those key points that I just talked about. If you have anything to add to that, or just to, kind of summarize again where we're at and where this might lead us in the future.
Yeah, just one thing, that kind of comes up to me over and over again as we have these conversations, is that I'm glad we're having these conversations, because like you just said, there are people out there. I think sometimes collectors that don't have this issue, and good on you if you don't realize this. There are people out there that are probably putting most of their savings into these FOMO books. Yeah. And think about that for a second. Like, a lot of America lives paycheck to paycheck. Yep. I'm not exempt from that. I'm pretty damn close to that right now. And, if I were to go every time, I get an alert, whatever site, I'm not going to single out any place, but there's several places that have these lists. If you went and bought every book that's on those lists, those are a lot of lottery tickets that won't pay off. Or if you're not careful on how you time things, it's not going to work out. And like I've heard so many smart collectors say, like I've said myself, like that list, that's probably a better time to sell if that's purely if you're motivated by the financial interest in comic books. That's the time to sell, or at least to start timing your sale. Maybe if it's an upcoming project, think about it that way. Try to be educated. I think knowledge is the most important tool we have as comic book collectors. Don't take information for granted. I'd love to say, hey, just watch my videos and you'll learn That's not true. I make mistakes all the time. I say the wrong issue number, or I'm mistaken in my information. I love those corrections. I want to be corrected on that information. But I know, as careful and much, research and preparation time and all the stuff I do and I put into my videos, I know other people out there are making mistakes. So don't just take, we've had many proven examples of these kind of sites and information places making that information out there and having to retract it, or having to correct it, or having something you say, well, actually that didn't really happen that way in the comic books. If you go back further, this is the first appearance, or whatever it might be. Right. So educate yourself with that knowledge. Really kind of think about the ramifications. Think about what's going to happen if that character does appear on screen, and realize you might not be able to predict it all the time. Like there's certain things that we think are pretty surefire, Silver Surfer, Galactus, right? And you can be smart about that. But there's also, it could go the other way. Like if you told me 10 years ago, Star-Lord's probably going to be cooler than Morbius on the screen, I wouldn't have bought that, man. Like that, come on. But that's what actually happened, in my opinion, at least. Yeah. And it's just important to realize that, we say this all the time in the hobby. It's a sentiment I see a lot. I think there's some fun that you can have with this kind of phrase, buy what you love, collect what you love. And I think there's a lot of truth to that, but think about what you love and be honest with yourself, because as collectors, there's this thing that happens where sometimes we say, buy what you love. And we don't acknowledge that like I love going into a shop or an antique store or a garage sale and finding a book. And even if it isn't necessarily a book that I'm in love with, I know like another collector will want that book and I got a great deal on it. That's exhilarating, right? I love doing that. That's really fun. Now, if I found an X-Men 1 or a Hulk 181 or something like that, I would be 100 times more happy, because that'd be a book for me, for my personal collection. Yep. But at the same time, like if I love doing that, be okay with that. But be prepared to sit on that book or own that book forever, or lose 10 times your money that you spent on it if it doesn't pan out the right way. If you're going to treat it like an investment, realize that all investments carry risk, and be prepared, when you're putting that savings down for that FOMO, really think twice, 3 times, 4 times before putting something on a credit card to buy a comic book. Yeah. Think about that really carefully. Try to make the hobby pay for itself. Plan to spend that money on, take 5% of your hobby money or whatever and put it towards investment on books or whatever it is that works out best for you. Have that plan, stick to it. And I bet you're going to find out that you're going to be happier in the long run.
Absolutely, man. I can't really add anything to that other than just remember, folks, we have to hold ourselves accountable too. We got to stop blaming apps or YouTubers. We can have our opinions to that, and we can understand how everything affects the market and everything affects the hobby.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, most of us are grown individuals doing grown things, making grown decisions. So we got to own up to the decisions that we make. And ultimately, that's going to keep you happier, just like Bronze Age was just saying. And it's going to keep the hobby more sustainable. And I think for the long term, look, I've said it and I'll say it before. I'm still an optimist, and I still believe that this hobby is not going anywhere anytime soon. I think it's constantly evolving. And I think we're just at another point where certain things are shifting. But I'm very, very optimistic about the future. Yeah, I think as long as we are continuing to have productive conversation as well, within these types of settings as well, we're taking so much out of it, and we're bettering ourselves and helping each other be better collectors for future, decisions that we're making with our money, because money is time. Money is our time, right? I mean, we work hard to earn it. So,
yeah,
folks, man, very, very great stream. Bronze Age Nerd, thank you so much for hanging out today. Lastly, do you got any live shows, any whatnot shows coming up?
yeah, and in this, it feels a little funny to talk about whatnot when we're talking about warning people away from FOMO. But hey, it's collect responsibly. Yeah, I do. I'm on whatnot. Gonna schedule a show probably for coming up later this week. I don't think I'm gonna quite get to one this weekend. As I mentioned at the top of the show, I was out of town the last couple of days, so it kind of derailed any plans for that. But real fast, I did do a charity auction for victims of drunk driving. And be doing that donation soon once the whatnot funds start to roll in, once they pay out everything. And I just want to thank everybody in the community for supporting that, being behind it, sharing those posts, all that stuff that really helped out. It helped out so much that I'm going to continue to do charity streams, charity auctions on whatnot. And probably in about a month and a half, I'll be doing another one. That'll be a veteran themed one. And I'm going to keep going, kind of rotating in new causes, shining some light on some stuff, getting some funds into some hands that people use it, because that is when this community is at its best, when we can help other people and kind of build each other up, in my opinion. So I love doing that. If you guys want to check out the channel over on my YouTube channel, I'd love to have you over there. If you enjoy the kind of conversations that we have here over at Journo's channel, I think you're going to enjoy the kind of stuff we talk about over there as well. We'd love to have you.
Absolutely. Yes. Indeed. Yeah. Link is below. I have the link to Bronze Age Nerd's YouTube. Go subscribe. Follow him on Instagram. Follow him on the Whatnot app. Again, from one Chris to another, Bronze Age. Thank you so much for being here tonight and hanging out.
Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's funny because you made the show really smooth, because you took so many words or thoughts right out of my mouth that just was like, yep. And not that, guys, I'm not saying that just to say we all need to agree all the time, but that's why I like this guy, man. Similar perspectives, and I loved hearing those perspectives from somebody else. So thank you for being an awesome guest. Chat, thank you guys so much for being here. Again, go sub up Bronze Age Nerd. I'll see you guys on Sunday over on Comic Book Canon. That link is below, so make sure you sub us over there as well. And, keep a lookout for our videos. We drop videos all the time. That's what we're here for. Be well, guys. Have a good weekend. Be safe. Until next time.
Later.